Because if I don't do it now, I will forget.
All right, then. You got anything to say about Mr. Londonderry? I was told he works here. Londonderry? Oh, you'll want to speak to the foreman. He's down in the pit.
Can I just ask everyone to mute their mics if they're not speaking, so we get some bleed through? Thank you very much. Just so that we can hear each other. Um, yeah, how's everyone doing? And where are you guys all tuning in from? I say tuning in, not tuning in at all. It's completely the wrong phrase. Make me sound like someone much older than maybe I am. But yeah, jump on the chat. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Where are you coming from? What you may be interested in during this call. That might help me in some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. Some people all over the place. LA, Toronto, Antwerp, Copenhagen, NYC, San Diego. I realized today that the PST time on the invite was wrong. It said 10 a.m. and it's 1 a.m. where one sorry. It was said 10 a.m. It's 1 p.m. where you are now. So unless I managed to jump forward or backwards in time, thank you for coming and realizing that it was EST wrong as well. Thanks, James. I'm glad you made it anyway.
Yeah, I found you guys by luck.
Thank you. I'm glad you did. All right. Okay, so it's 1 minute past. I'm going to kick off. So officially kick off. So yeah, first of all, thank you everyone for coming along to this webinar on Krotos Studio Pro. Can I just remind everyone to mute themselves if they're not speaking? That would help me a great deal. And we're going to go through a bunch of different workflows using Krotos Studio. I'm going to touch on lots of different use cases. I'm going to design a clip that we've never done before that I just got yesterday. So hopefully I can keep up and manage to pull it off. And yeah, so we're going to redesign this whole clip. Going to go through loads of different things. If you have a question and you want to jump in, please feel free to do so. I may not see your question for some time, but I'll try and answer as quick as I can. I see your face is here as well now, so hopefully he can maybe answer some questions in the chat at the same time. Yeah, I'll try and get through all this stuff with time so we can have questions and a discussion at the end. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think. If you have things that you want to cover, you want me to go over again or anything like that. So let's crack on. Let's share screen. And okay, does everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. Can you hear this?
Sounds good.
Great. Now we're cooking the gas. All right. So the webinar is called "How to Elevate Your Sound Design Workflow." So we're going to take a look at, like I said, a bunch of different ways of working with the Krotos Studio. So I'm going to blast through loads of stuff. It's probably going to be quite fast. If you have a burning question, pop it in the chat. Otherwise, just write it down, and I'll leave time for questions at the end. there may be some, different ways that maybe you didn't realize you could work with Krotos Studio. I hope that's the case. And I'm not just repeating things you've seen or read or seen elsewhere. But okay, here we go. So what I'm going to try and do is go through this clip here. So we have a soldier type character in a kind of warehouse, an urban environment. They're walking around, going through all sorts of different rooms, do all sorts of different things. The clip's about a minute 20. I'm going to try and do the whole thing during the course of the webinar. I won't probably do every sound effect, but I'll try and cover as much as I can. We chose this clip because I think it allows us to showcase sort of different ways of doing sound design that lean itself well to the Krotos Studio workflow. So let's kick off. I'm going to start off with doing some of the ambiances. That's a nice way just to start the work off. So for those of you who maybe don't know, ambiances is one of the things that Krotos Studio seems to be very popular at doing. We have this particular workflow where
so the match has
you
come
can
together. It did re-multiply.
You start up a preset and it starts to load immediately. You can then use the simple controls to mix between the layers as they generate. You can, of course, generate as much or as little as you want using these various techniques. So it's great if you need to fill out like one scene or tons of scenes or generate tons of ambience, but still have control over it, generate it without repetition and all this type of stuff. So for this first scene, I'm going to use the first approach I'm going to use is just going to try and find a preset, something going to help me right off the bat. So I'm going to go into the search, which it's not letting me type in for some reason. Let me try that again. Hopefully that's not a strange Zoom issue. Great, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to type in industrial because it feels like a kind of warehouse industrial type environment. Okay, so I've got a couple of options here. I'm going to go with industrial exterior to start. So I'll load up that preset. That's something that's pre-made from the library. All right, so starting to generate using these different layers that we can see here. Now I can obviously then control the mix of these layers. For example, turning down the train yard layer if I don't want that. I can maybe increase the likelihood of these impacts being added into the scenario as well. I'm just going to sort of set a balance here of something that feels like a good starting layer. And okay, so you'll notice obviously that as soon as the preset loaded and I started using it, this recording started. So as you may know, everything in Krotos Studio gets recorded under the hood. The advantage of this is that you can quickly stop interacting and then drag and drop the result straight to the timeline. So this is the most straightforward way of working with ambiances. So first, I just take the ambience that I just made whilst I was talking out loud, drag and drop it into my timeline here. So that would be the most straightforward way that I could be working with the plugin. Okay, so I play that in with the scene. It's obviously a bit loud. I can turn that down. That's a reasonable starting point, I would say. It's okay. We can maybe do better. Obviously, the disadvantage of just doing the stereo drag and drop out for ambiances is that it doesn't quite give you much control later on in the mix. This is what some people often ask me about. So let's take a look at how you can gain a bit more control over this stuff. So I've prepped a bunch of tracks here in my ambience group. And as you can see, I've got a handful here that I have adjusted the routing to. So everything in Krotos Studio comes out of multiple different stereo channels. So I'm using Krotos Studio Pro here, and I'm going to show some of the Pro functionality later in the webinar. But as you can see, if you go under the hood, you see that you've got 4 tabs. These tabs contain multiple engines that can be configured to do different things. But every preset has the same structure of tabs, and every tab comes out of a different stereo out. So this is great for ambiances, but basically anything you create with Studio will always have this ability to do what I'm going to show now, to get the stems and the layers out from anything you do as you go. So for this preset, and like any other, all you need to do is go to your track routing. So I've created another set of stereo tracks here, and I've simply gone to, obviously in Pro Tools, this will be different depending on which DAW you're using. I've gone to, plugin, and I've just set tab 1 as the input to this one, tab 2 for this one, etc., just making sure that I've selected the right instance of Krotos Studio. So all I need to do now is go back to the beginning of the track. If I start the preset, just use the same preset just for reference. It's going to start generating these layers. If I then press record, you'll see we're starting to record the stems as they're then being generated. So that just made a really loud impact. We can get around that because of the way we're actually doing this. So obviously that's going to record the moves I make in the XY pads as well. So any sort of live automation that you tend to do or performance here is going to get printed directly to these stems. So it's going to be really, really handy for that purpose. All right, so I'm going to stop. I'm not going to pick up the recording because I've just recorded it all directly to the timeline. So now, obviously, this is going to be really handy because we'll see a perfect example of this, like that impact that came out was actually really loud. That's not really what I want. So I can easily just highlight that region and turn it down, leaving everything else we did at the exact mix that we just had it. So I've got, for example, just the train layer here. I can choose to, mix that, EQ it, pan it, do whatever I want with it. This workflow is obviously going to help you a lot if you're working in Atmos or other multi-channel sessions. You've got the bed on this one and just the bed. Then got all the other layers individually. So those can be mixed, muted, automated, however it is you want to do it. It gives you loads and loads of control to do that. So remember, of course, that I'm still just doing this with ambiances. You can, of course, do this with pretty much any other preset will have exactly the same workflow. So if you're doing like a cinematic preset and it's got loads of layers, every time you interact with it and you hook these tracks up and record in this way, you're going to get those stems out. So that's something that people have asked me quite a lot about if that's possible, and this is how you do it. Okay, so that's two very quick ways of working with ambiances. There is another way, so let's take a look at that. In fact, there are multiple other ways. So let's look at the next way of doing it. So our first shot here is in this sort of interior environment, and the section lasts about here. It's actually about here. We see our character then move out into a sort of larger space. So I'm going to highlight this whole area on a stereo audio track, and I'm going to load Krotos Studio up as an audio suite plugin. So obviously the great thing about this is that I can generate an exact duration, like a frame accurate thing to exactly how long I want it. So if you need, I don't know, an hour of a particular ambience for some reason, you can just literally highlight 1 hour of it, do this, render it offline. Or you can do what I'm doing now, which is basically almost like shot by shot or section by section. So we're going to double whammy this, and we're going to not going to use that preset. We're going to use the AI ambience generator now to create a new preset from scratch. But again, that's still going to be appropriate. So AI ambience generator is up here in the top bar. You open it up and it asks you to describe what you want. So just like ChatGPT or any other kind of prompt-based AI tool. All right, so I'm going to type in, it doesn't like me typing for some reason. Okay, this was not a problem. I think this is a problem whenever you run Zoom at the same time. Let's try again, and hopefully it will allow me to type. If not, there we go. All right, cool. So I'm going to go for deserted urban warehouse as my prompt. You can write more if you want. I tend to find that just a short description also works fairly well. Okay, so that's generated a preset and it started playing it. So if I click preview, you can hear what the AI ambience generator has created. So let me just adjust that a little bit. So the first thing to point out with the AI ambience generator is that this isn't generative audio. These aren't synthesized things. These are actually sounds in my library that are part of the Krotos Studio library that I've downloaded and installed. It is now basically built me a preset based on that, the prompt I gave it. So that's very, very handy, but it's still high quality, real world quality recordings recorded by our sound designers. All right, so this is giving me a different set of assets that are going to play out over time for as long as I want, but in the same kind of vein as the first preset I found, which is kind of useful. All right, so just for the sake of argument, I'm now going to just stop preview, and I'm just going to hit render, and we're going to see that print to the duration that I selected. So the exact duration that I wanted is now there. So here we go. We can play that back. Again, that's a bit loud, so we'll turn it down, but that gives us the first start. Okay, so the nice thing about this is that you can obviously then select the next scene, which is from about there to here. Our character's in that larger hallway space. So we can use this workflow in that way as well. So what I'm going to do next is I'll start that preview up again so we can hear the same preset again. Let's maybe make an adjustment on the layers so it's going to sound slightly different. focus more on the metal layers that are going to be generated. I'm going to turn on the quick effects, and I'm going to choose an impulse response that's appropriate to what we saw on the screen. And I'm just going to use the distance control to move it a bit away. So it feels like we're in a bigger, larger environment. So I'm going to actually turn down those metal bits a little bit because they're a bit much. Okay, now I hit render. And then again, we rendered the duration we wanted for that next section of the clip, which I need to solo as well. Okay, cool. So it's only a very short clip, but again, I think you'll get the point. Okay, so the next one, we're going to go back, and the next section is kind of indoors as the character moves around. So till about there. So again, I've highlighted that section now. I'm going to go back into Audio Suite again, and I'm going to use a different technique just to show off another way of doing this. Okay, so using AI ambience generator again, we used a prompt. This was the prompt that we gave it, and it built us this particular preset. All right, so I'm going to delete that prompt, and I'm going to use this little button here, which allows me to insert a image. So I'm going to go back, and I'm actually just going to take a screenshot of that first frame, because that's kind of a decent representation of this sort of warehouse environment. And you can see enough of the actual environment, unlike one where you get a close-up of the character. Cool. So I'm going to then go and import that screenshot, just this. All right. So I'll import that using the ambience generator, and you can see now it's built a prompt based on the image. So it's analyzed the image, and it's saying, okay, well, this is what I think I see. This is what I think is going to be useful to build this preset for you. So let's hit generate and see what it creates. Okay, let's select an audio region. It was about there. Again, I'm doing this fast, so it may not be ultra precise, but again, just trying to demonstrate word for word. Okay, so similar set of components, but it's introduced this sort of dripping water, which I think is quite nice, and also some other kind of creaky elements that are going to get introduced as well. Again, I'm going to use the quick effects here just to place this into a space. Maybe something with wooden floors, a bit like that. Okay, I'll move that away as well. And let's go for that. Render it. And that will now be the duration that I selected. So at fairly high speed, we've looked at a bunch of different ways that you can put an ambience into your scene using Krotos Studio. So you've got the straight up drag and drop stereo WAV. You've got breaking something out into multiple stems, rendering it out in real time. And then you've got the audio suite workflow of selecting an exact region and rendering it offline. So there's loads of options here. We've also shown using the ambience generator to generate a preset for you based on either what you say or what you give it based on the scene you're working on. So there's loads of really, really handy stuff here for working at speed, but still giving you plenty of control. Obviously, you can, if you have access to the edit mode, you can then obviously build your own presets from your own assets using the same techniques and the same sort of templates and layouts and presets that we've got here. And you can then leverage all those workflows that I just showed using your own assets. Okay, cool. Right, so I'm going to jump in next. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at doing some footsteps.
I'm just checking out this thing, Krotos Studio, even though I can't afford Krotos.
I'm just going to mute people if I can, because that's going to distract me just a little bit. So just please remember to mute your microphones if that's all right. That will help me a lot when I'm trying to go through this. Okay, cool. So let's look at some footsteps. So I'm going to mute the ambiances and let's just run the clip quickly to figure out where we're going to need them. So our character starts to walk, I think, when he steps out into that hallway. Okay, so I've got another instance of Krotos Studio here on a stereo MIDI track. Instrument track, sorry, and I'm going to have to load the Boots preset here, Boots Urban. Let's load that one first, and this one, then there we go. Okay, so the workflow here is you can easily just click with the mouse to generate a step. Every step is going to be unique, and then you can walk across different surfaces. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. I'm actually going to do it another way. I'm going to use a MIDI controller, which is out of shot, you can't see, but trust me, it is there. So clicking C3 on my keyboard is going to trigger the step based on where I have it in the XY here. All right, so let's go and just run the scene. And I'm going to do this live, hopefully in time as we go. So he's going to step out. There we go. And again, I'm going to skip this one because that's not on concrete. And then there's a one last clip here. Great. Okay, so I might not be exactly right on all of those, but I can quickly, I could do it again, or I can edit the MIDI that I've got. But again, just to showcase that, yes, you can use MIDI, you can use automation. This is how you do it. You just arm it and go, particularly for things like footsteps. This is a really, really cool workflow. All right, so you might have noticed that I skipped some of the steps as the character was going up here because the preset I loaded here was walking on concrete. You obviously see they're going up some wooden stairs, which is not concrete. So let's use that as an example, a way of doing footsteps a different way. So if I load up the boots indoor preset, you'll see that we get a different set of surfaces, but the same workflow. I could duplicate this track and set up another MIDI channel and do it that way, but I'm actually just going to use the drag and drop. I'm going to do this as audio. So another way of showcasing how you can actually do the steps. So again, if I run the clip, okay, so I think I was slightly out, but because it's audio, that'll be easy enough to edit once I get there. So where was the first one? It was about there, right? Okay, so I'll drag that recording out and let's see what we got. That's completely out, isn't it? Let's move that back. There we go. Right. Okay. Close enough. Okay. So let's continue. So again, I could tighten those up. I could edit them. That would be, really easy for me to do. But I'm just going to keep going because I want to show you guys some other stuff. So footsteps with MIDI, footsteps with drag and drop. Okay. So next thing I'm going to look at is a cloth Foley pass. So again, this can be done using the basic cloth preset, which is what I'm going to use. I'm going to set the mix for it right in the middle. Our guy's kind of wearing tactical gear, so it's probably a mix of all these things, I would say. Sounds quite mixed. It's going to be quite a handy way of doing it. Now, I could watch the clip and do this offline and then drag and drop over. That would rely me on then resyncing it again by hand. And because the cloth movement is a very kind of subtle and quite performative thing, I'm actually going to do it another way. So what I've done here is I've set up a cloth track and I've set the input of this to be bus 1 and 2. So I'm going to change the output of the track I have Krotos Studio on to be bus 1 and 2. And then I'm going to pick it up on this cloth track here, which is not working because I'm using the wrong instance. Just a second. Okay, cool. Right, let's go ahead with that. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm basically just going to press record and I'm going to try and perform this whole cloth pass in one go. And we'll just record the whole thing from me using the mouse. We'll record it just straight to the track as audio like you're recording an instrument. So let's have a go at that and see how that goes. That's not working. Am I using the right one? Oh, I didn't press record. That'll be why. Okay, stop there. So that wasn't my greatest take, but again, you kind of get the idea of how you can actually approach this. So the nice thing about that is that that take has gone in now as audio like you're using a real instrument. So I could obviously go back and reperform different sections of it if I wanted to. We could go back and take another take, do another layer with a different surface, a different type of texture, sorry. There are all sorts of different ways we can do that. So something else that I would like to do once I've got that first pass in is this exact move here, where the guy shoves the magazine into his vest. That needs something much more specific. So the kind of general pass I did isn't really going to cut it. And I'm just going to do that kind of without running the clip. And I'm then just going to take the performance I do and just drag it in. So I kind of know what I need. I need this kind of quick downward movement. So I'm just going to try that here. I need to this, don't I? Okay, let's try that. That might work. So I'm going to pick that up, drag it in, bring that over. It's going to be about there. Okay, it wasn't too bad. Let me just adjust the texture a little bit. Okay, let's maybe try that as well. That was a little bit more powerful. Maybe the combination of the two might work quite nicely together. But the nice thing about that is that, I'm aware that the first thing I did wasn't right and it wasn't detailed enough. And I can kind of backtrack and do these little movements, little motions, little performances, and then sync them back up again. Okay, I'll go with that. Again, I could do it again as many times as I want. I could edit it, I can mix it differently, all sorts of stuff. But again, just to highlight the different workflow, if I need something general, I can go do a general pass like I did it as a performance, and I can backtrack and do an exact spot. Okay, so speaking of other spots, other moves, let's take another look at another thing we'll need to add here. So I'm going to do some gun Foley. We're going to do a similar approach. So I've got a gun Foley preset here. Let me just set the mix to a particular blend. Okay, that should work. So I've set up another track called Gun Foley. I've done the same thing again. So this is receiving from the bus that this is then routed to. So this allows me to just record it like an instrument in one go. I don't need to drag and drop if I don't have to at all. I can go back and do that, of course, as well. If I miss something, I want to do a quick spot. But let's see how I get on with just doing it in one go, in one take. All right, so again, there's some elements there that probably aren't right. I can go back and redo them. I can, adjust them in the mix. I can reperform certain elements. But for a quick demonstration of, hey, I managed to do that in one go, in sync, that's not a bad start. Again, I'm blasting through a lot of this stuff really quickly because I'm aware of time, just kind of sketching the different workflows here. But listening back, all right, so for example, that one, that's definitely not right. I don't like that at all. I'm going to just do it again. And again, I just need a kind of quick little thing as he comes around the corner. That's, again, too much. Let's try again. That feels much more appropriate. It's just a little more subtle. Let's just drag that over and resync it as it comes around the corner. Maybe about there. Okay, I much prefer that. That felt much more real. Again, maybe not perfect, but huge improvement on the thing that I did whilst I was winging it all in one go. Great. Okay, let's continue. So there are a few things I'm going to skip. Hopefully I can come back later and do them with you guys, but I'd rather just see what questions you have. There's a door here. I'm going to skip that for the time being. I'm going to move on to showcase some other things. So the next thing I'm going to do is that we've just done a kind of Foley and ambience pass so far. So I think something that the scene would benefit from, particularly if I have to hand the whole thing over, would be just a little drone or something vaguely tonal to just gel the whole thing together, make it feel a little bit more cinematic. So I'm going to go to our drone category here. And I'm going to go to this one called Mysterious. All right, so loading that up, bit like the ambiances, they just start playing. So it's a drone. It's not going to have tonal development over time. It's literally just going to drone. So the nice thing about that is that I can obviously mix between the layers of this as it's generating, or just define a particular combination of elements that's going to work for me. So let me just set that. I kind of like the mix of those two. I'm going to stop and I'm going to restart that. So I kind of like the idea of just doing a kind of little pitch bend there with the knob and then moving over to another layer to have a little bit of movement, bit of evolution to the drone as it's playing out. Then I'll go back through that tense layer and back into the low layer. All right, cool. So that's going to give us a kind of tone, a kind of feel I quite like, but it will still move. It's not going to be a true drone, which makes it feel a little bit more real. So let's go back and try that in the scene now. Okay, nice. So coming to the end of the clip, I feel like we need something else just to ramp this up a little bit. So I'm going to go to a different preset. So let's see what we've got here. Kind of like this. I'm going to just pitch this up as it goes to ramp the tension up as it generates. Okay, let's stop that and stick that in. That will be quite nice for maybe like the last third of this as we are ramping up to the cut at the end. So the end is going to be about there. I can now bring that in as well. I can see someone's drawing on my screen. I'm going to go to the chat and see what the question is in just one sec. So there we got the second drone layer coming in now, just to drive the tension up a little bit. Nice. Okay, cool. So we've fleshed out loads of stuff there. I've got a feeling there are some questions in the chat. So if I can grab the chat really quickly, let me just jump into see if there are some questions here. But I would like to try and keep going if I can, and I'll come back to the chat later on if I miss your question. So let me just go right down. Looks like Orpheus is helping me with questions here, which is great. Okay, looks like Orpheus is handling the questions pretty well. Right, I'm going to jump back to that towards the end. I'm just going to continue. Thanks for asking the questions, Orpheus. Okay, right. So the next thing we're going to get to is having a little bit more fun. So towards that sort of last third of the scene, we've got these kind of fire flickers and kind of flashbacks and action-y things. So let's take a go at those. So let's just go and search for fire and see what we've got. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different stuff. So I'm going to start with this preset, which is a kind of fiery whoosh preset. But the nice thing about this is once I start moving in it, I can kind of, it's almost like waving a giant torch around, which is kind of what I want for this last section, which has got a lot of these flare-ups and the fire is moving around quite a lot. So I'm going to use this to kind of just gesture around, give us some fire movement. Just to have that in the palette. Okay, so let's drag that over and pop it in where that real fire, intense fire section, I think it was there. No, that's just a flash. So the intense fire section is more like there. Let's try that, see how that feels to start. It's probably a little bit loud. Got some flashes earlier on. Okay, so as a start, it's okay, but we probably want a little bit more movement in here. Let's try a different preset and let's see what we get here. So, okay, so this is an AI preset where it's broken up various files into these little pins. And as I move through them, I kind of generating a whoosh. So, all right, so I kind of like that type of movement through. Wasn't so keen on that one. Okay, that's quite a nice one. So in this type of scenario, I'm kind of just using it like a sketch pad of just seeing what I can create that kind of appeals to my ear and think might work with the scene. Okay, so I've got a handful of them there. So I'm just going to drag those out. Those I think might be quite handy in combination with what I just did, or maybe earlier on when we've got these little flash moments. So let's pop some of those on and see how they feel. Where was the first fire bit about there? Okay, so let's see how this feels now. think I prefer that one actually when the big fire comes in. But again, we're kind of just sketching here and moving at high speed. So the next thing I need, this fire isn't really present enough for me. So I'm going to load up the fireplace and get a kind of really crackly, sizzly, embery layer out of that and layer it in there as well. That's probably more than enough. All right, so let me grab that. I'm going to throw that over as well. So we're building this sort of multi-layered fire texture movement sound design, basically, by sort of playing around with these different presets, getting the different moves, the different sort of ways of approaching that material. So let's add that in now and see how it sounds. Gonna need some more there.
Later.
Okay, so I feel like we're getting there. Let's see what else we've got. This one is kind of like a match, as I remember. But as long as I hold my mouse and I'm moving around, I'm getting this sort of wavy fire-like texture, which I quite like, and will be good again for the movement of the fire. So I'm actually going to turn down these other layers. So I'm not going to get the strike. I'm not going to get the release. I'm just going to get the kind of wavy bit. Almost like gas, or that element of the fire, something that's got a lot of movement to it. So again, I could do this in sync with picture as well, but I'm just kind of almost just doing it blind, kind of sketching, because I've got a feeling that some of this material is going to be quite useful when I start to just edit all this stuff together. So I can put like a little wavy layer here towards the end. I think some of these little bursts might work quite nicely on these flashes as well. Okay, that's not so bad. Okay, cool. So there's a couple of ways of doing fire. As I remember, there's one more, which I think might also be quite helpful on these little flashes. We got these little flashes that are like a couple of frames, like really, really fast. I just want to really punctuate them and help them stand out, give them some punch. So this one is a kind of elemental whoosh, it's called. So we've obviously got fire, earth, water, and wind. So I only want the fire, so I'm just going to get rid of the other layers by moving this to the top corner. And depending on then how I click, move, I'm going to get a different type of fire whoosh movement. So I think, again, these might be nice just to punctuate these little flashes that we saw. Again, they've got a lot of energy. They're pretty punchy. Yeah, I'll try that one again. Okay, nice. So again, like if I get something that I don't like, I don't have to take it or use it. But I like this thing where I can just sketch and make a sound that I think might be interesting or might be worth trying, throw it in and try it out. Okay, yeah, those are okay. I'm not crazy about them, but let's keep going. So I've noticed that here we need a bit more fluid fire. So I'm going to go back to that first fire preset. I'm going to get a different blend. Move that around, get some movement, because I need something here as well, because I was kind of missing that when the fire came in. So again, I'm being quite imprecise here. You can, of course, perform this with much greater detail and much greater editing skill than what I'm doing now. Okay, cool. Right. So again, now we've kind of punctuated these flashes a little bit. They cut out of the edit a little bit more. I want to add one more thing onto them just to make them pop a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the glitch category. I just want something kind of really digital and nasty to just jump through to kind of punctuate that a little bit. So let's try some of these. Okay, that was nice, but I don't want the reverb. Okay, some of that might work. Sorry, my voice is starting to break up already. Let's grab that and drag it in. I have got a marker for where that first flash is, so I just want a part of that little glitch. Okay, that was quite nice. Let's go to a different preset and try another one. Yep. Yeah, that's not really what I want. Maybe. Let's see if I can do any better. That's a bit too tonal. That's also a bit too tonal in a different way. No, not so keen on that. I'm going to go back to where I started. Yeah, let's try that one with the reverb. Let's just see how that fits. Maybe that, I mean, maybe might get just lost in, not lost in the mix, but buried in the mix anyway. But we just want something to punctuate. Okay, that's not so bad. I like that. Okay, cool. So, I could, of course, continue, do this differently. I'm sure do it better if I'd had a bit more time. But again, I'm just trying to illustrate, how you can throw these things together using the workflows that you got here in quite a fast way and quite a flexible way. All right, so the last thing I want to show, two last things I want to show. One thing we want to look at now is actually building your own preset. We're going to build one really quickly just to showcase how it's done using the edit mode. So we saw the edit mode really early on, really quickly when I just went under the hood and said, okay, here are the different tabs. These come out the different stereo outs. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to build a preset from scratch. So I'm going to use a template to help me do this. So I'm going to go to Load Factory Preset, Preset Templates. These are a little hidden at the moment. I would like to change that. And I'm going to go to this one called Cinematic Template. So I'm going to make a kind of cinematic impact patch, and we're going to use that to add some cinematic impacty sounds to the scene. All right, so as you can see, there's nothing in here, so it's not going to make any sound. So let's change that. So I'm just going to use Finder to grab some files that I have pre-prepared. You can, of course, use the same technique I'm going to show for grabbing files from SoundMiner, Soundly, Basshead, whatever it is you're using. But the idea is if you can drag and drop it, you can take it from anywhere. So I've got a bunch of sort of booms, and I'm going to just pick them up, drag them in. So as you may have noticed, I dragged 5 in. You can drag in up to 250 sounds per slot here. So you can have enormous numbers of sounds, give you loads of variation. So here I've just put 5 sounds in. So clicking in the XY pad is now going to trigger those sounds that I've added. Those are a bit loud. Let's turn it down. So the template already has a bunch of stuff set up so that if I click over here in layer 2, you're not actually going to hear those booms at all. So this uses the sort of 4-way mixer that we use in lots of presets that allows you to control those elements really easily. So I'm going to fill these other layers up as well, so this will make a bit more sense as I go. But right now, if I click in the corner, I'm just going to hear the booms. Right, so I'm going to right click and rename this so it'll be easier to understand, hopefully later. And that is automatically being connected in the template to what's called layer 1. So again, right click, rename that to boom. Let's keep going. So move on to layer 2. So obviously, if I click in layer 2 right now, I'm not going to hear anything because I haven't added any sounds. So let's add some more sounds that might complement that boom. I've got a couple of sort of howly synthesized things here. That's that layer. I don't really want the impact because I want to keep the impact coming from the boom. So I'm just going to turn up the attack on this layer. So I just get that kind of pulsy thing. Now, if I click in the middle, I should get a combination of the both of them. I'm just going to adjust a few more things to get a bit more variation out of it. Let's rename this as well to, I called them howls, so let's keep calling them that. That'll help me remember what's actually there when I want to actually perform the sound. So I can get a combination of the two. I can get a boom on its own. I can get a howl on its own. Okay, so far, so straightforward. Layer 3, let's add something into there. Let's make this a little bit more intricate. So what I want there is some of these metal hits that I've pre-made as well. So I drag those in. Those are going to be on layer 3. Nice. Okay, I think that's going to complement quite well. I'll rename this to metal and layer 3 to metal as well. All right, so now if I click in the middle, I get a combination of boom, metal, and howl. And every time I click, I get a different version of it, which is nice because it's much more natural. Last layer, I'm going to do this a little bit differently to showcase how you can set this up, make something more, maybe more intricate, depending on what you have in your head. So I don't want just another one shot here. I want something a little bit more evolving, a bit more interesting. So I'm going to delete this sampler that was the default thing in layer 4. And I'm going to, showcase then how you can construct your own collection of engines to meet your creative needs. So by clicking on engine, I can choose something else. So I'm going to choose a granular processor. And the sound I'm going to add is actually from this magic folder. So this is just the Krotos starter library that some of you may already have. So this is a kind of spell chimey type of sound. I'm going to throw that into my granular layer. And that's what it sounds like. I want that to be a much more interesting sound though. So I'm going to go to the randomization section. I'm going to up the start, pitch, and pan, and even level randomization, and trigger again. So now every time I'm going to get something that's much more, granular and interesting and evolving. I want the release to be much longer as well. All right, so I now need to assign the volume of this into the template. So anything you see that has a name in the edit mode, if you see a little grabby hand on it, you can grab it and drag it to the assign area down here. So I want to assign that to layer 4, that corner. So I just drag and drop it over there. Once you've dragged and dropped stuff into any of these little drop zones, if you click, you can then go inside and then set the range that is applied to each parameter that's inside there. So I want that range to be at max because I want this to play at max in the corner and then turn itself down automatically wherever I go, anywhere else. So hoping you're still with me. Cool. Let's rename that again. So, I'm not going to forget. It's going to be easy to backtrack and, debug this patch and figure out what the hell's going on. Okay, nice. So the nice thing about using that template as well, which I have to just adjust a bit because I added something that wasn't in the template, is that there's a pitch knob here that's hard coded to control all of them off the bat. So now I can control pitch and click and move, and I can start to actually perform and create sound effects using this patch that I put together really quickly. Let's use it now. And add some cinematic sounds to the scene that we've been working on. So I think what would be nice would be just as the character goes into the hall, just to have a quick boom about there, just to kind of punctuate things a little bit. So I'm just going to create one by clicking in that corner, and I know exactly what it's going to do. I don't have to do it in sync. I've done it sort of offline. I now pick that up, and I'm just going to drag it out, and I'm going to pop it just about there. Okay, so maybe a little bit later on, I want another type of cinematic impact. I'll use this patch to do it. So yeah, just here in that sort of, when it cuts to the tunnel, I feel like another type of boomer might be quite useful. Let's see what we can make from the patch that we just made. Okay, so let's try that. Let's pick that one up, drag it over. I want it to be about there. Okay. And let's do one more for the trailer reveal of the logo at the end. Again, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to use that last one that I did. Pop it in there. Let's cut to the end. Cool. All right. So very, very last thing. I'll do it in 2 minutes and I'll move on to questions. So some of you might know we also added some music presets to Krotos Studio recently. So how do those work? Let me show you very, very quickly. So let me find the instance of Krotos Studio that I was using. I believe it's here. Great. Okay, so what happens with the music presets, a bit like the ambience ones and the drone ones, is as soon as you load one, it starts generating the music. Once it's generating, you can make as much music as you like. This can go on for 20 minutes if you want to, or 3 seconds. You can, of course, then adjust the mix of those elements that are playing out and get more control over it. So that's just one way of using the music presets. So I don't think this one's quite right for the clip, at least how I'm interpreting it. I want to try another one, just this one. There's a bit more drive and a bit of a pulse, but I don't want the drums and the bass. I want just something like really clean and I just want the pulse because I've got all these other SFX going on. So out of shot, I've got a MIDI controller. I'm just gonna right click on the XY pad here to then assign a knob to drive the intensity. I'm gonna do the same on the other XY pad for the mix on this side so I can bring in some drums. And hopefully I can watch the clip now. Oops. What happened there? Oh, I know why. Right. Okay, let's start again. So I'll start the clip, start the preset, watch the clip as I go. And just watching it, I can respond with my MIDI controller. Okay, so not perfect. Might be a good start. I'm sure if I did a second take, I could probably do it a little bit better. But again, now I've got that little custom track that I did really quickly using those controls. I can turn it down, pop it in the mix, and let's hear the whole thing back. Okay, cool. So that's everything I was going to show. It's taken me a little longer than I was hoping, but thank you very much for sticking with me. I'm sure there have been lots of questions. I'm now going to move over to the chat and try and answer them if Orpheus hasn't already answered all of them. So, and if anyone at this stage now wants to jump in and ask something, please feel free. Thanks for listening to me for nearly an hour. So yes, over to you guys. Fire away. What do you think? Any questions, queries, anything you'd like me to recap on, revisit, explain, etc.? I'm just reading the chat. Is it door taking tempo? No, it's not yet, but that's something we'd like to do. Yes, eerie or serious? Yes. Well, that it could be definitely another way of doing it. I could have used the other track that I started with, any of the other tracks, all sorts of stuff quickly.
Did you mute your initial footsteps where like he was running? I didn't hear it when you play it later.
You know what? I think I did because I ended up using that instance to do everything else. But all I have to do is go back and swap the preset back. And as if by magic, they should hopefully restore. Thanks, Jason, for pointing that out. It's a live demo. Mistakes will be made. There we go. So hopefully now these should be steps. There we go. There we go. So they're back. Cool.
Yeah, that was nice.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the observation. I'm glad someone was listening. Okay, so yeah, some questions here about panning with some of the whoosh stuff. Yeah, so with some of these whooshes, there is panning set up by default. So like the fire one I was using, this has panning in it. Because when we made it first, we kind of felt like this might be a good way to make a kind of fire whoosh transition as it moves from left to right. If you have access to Pro, you can, of course, change that. You can go in here and just remove the panning, so it's completely mono. So if I go in here, I can see the parameters that are assigned to it. I can just kill all the panning ones. This is now 100%. Well, it's not mono, it's actually stereo, but you can take the file and split it into two monos. But you can remove the panning information by doing that. Yeah. Right, let me crack on through the chat if there's anything else. What input device do you use? Mac, trackpad, or trackball? I'm just using a mouse, but you can use any device that you want. I heard someone also mention like the new Roly, like Airwave for remote, using MIDI control for all this stuff. I think that would be amazing. I don't have one myself, but I think that would be an amazing way to work with this. Someone was telling me today they had assigned like I think it was a MIDI joystick, or maybe it was from like a small Avid desk to control an XY pad as well. The one gotcha that I really discovered this afternoon is when you want to assign MIDI CCs, at least in Pro Tools, the instrument track has to be armed. If you don't arm it, it doesn't pick up the MIDI CCs. So I'll see what we can do about that. But that was a gotcha that even got me this afternoon. So for any people out there trying to assign MIDI controllers. Music loops, do they evolve, or are there a couple of measures? So they do evolve. Like all the music loops are like a couple of minutes long, so they're not just 4 bars repeating over and over again. And you can put your own music in there as well. So if you want to do that, I would recommend just taking a dive into one of the music presets. If you go under the hood, you can kind of see how these are constructed and use your own loops. I've had a couple of users do this already and actually show me what they've created using this, which is really amazing. But I would recommend trying it, because once you've built these out, they're really, really powerful. You do have to compose them in a particular way just to make the most of the intensity. So you've got sort of 3 layers that you can sort of drive through and also mix on the right. But once you get your head around that, it's a really powerful way of controlling the music. Can preset recall be automated? Unfortunately, not at the moment, no. So it's not like key switching. So that can't be done. However, all the stuff that I did, 90% of what I did here is audio, right? So the strength of this is as you create the sound as audio in the plugin, and then you just drag it out. If you're happy with that workflow, you don't actually have to worry about a lot of these presets, switches, or recalling, or even instances. So I only have 2 instances here, and one isn't actually now being used at all. Once Jason, told me that I, put the footsteps wrong, the footsteps one is the only instance that's actually active. Everything else is audio that's come directly out via drag and drop. So although you can't recall the preset, I think the workflow allows you to sort of sidestep that quite nicely. Cool. Let me step through. Does multiple output work in other doors? Yes, Johan. It works in exactly the same way. Depending on the host, the routing mechanism will be slightly different, but the principle is exactly the same. I believe this is all covered in the manual. If it's not, let me know and I can make sure that it is covered. Renaming of the quad. Can there be a link to renaming the thing of the layers and the CD quadrants? Yes, that's a great idea. There isn't a way to do that at the moment, but I totally understand why you'd want to. The challenge with that is because this is kind of like a semi-modular thing, and you can apply, you can assign anything or any number of things to like this corner called drums. It's a bit difficult for the system to know that. That's the kind of caveat to it. But I know exactly what you mean. It would be helpful just to have, one thing and it automatically pick up the naming. So yeah, Brent, picking up on your next question. So whilst recording, not printing in real time, although the XY moves being recorded as you go. Yeah, so basically anything you do is then recorded as audio. So the moves of the XY pad are not recorded internally. They just again it would be more like I'm playing a guitar, and whatever comes out of that guitar is then recorded, and that's what you drag out. You can set these moves, set these up as automatable parameters as well. So you can, the position of the XY pads, for example, they can all be exposed to Pro Tools or any DAW and recorded as automation. So if you want to record the exact moves as automation to edit or do whatever later, you can also do that.
Pardon. Do you know if any of these, I see you're using Pro Tools. I'm also going to be using Logic. Do most of these functions work directly in Logic, or does it need to be standalone?
No, everything I've done now you can do in Logic apart from the audio suite stuff to the beginning because I don't think Logic has a similar function. That's kind of a mainly a Pro Tools thing. But other than that, everything I've done you can do in Logic.
Thank you.
Cool. Let me keep going.
Homework already now.
You can lay down upstairs.
No,
You don't have to lay down.
I know, but it's nice.
Great
Nice.
question.
That doesn't sound like a question, but thank you. Um, can you MIDI control the XY pads? Yes, you can. So in the music example towards the end, I did that really quickly. I mean I only had a knob, so I only assigned one axis. But if you have something that spits out two axi, you can assign both of them to whatever you want. Do you have video tutorials for everything we saw today? No, not yet, but I think I probably should do. I literally figured out how to do this whole scene yesterday morning, so I can do a proper one and put it up on YouTube. That's a great idea. Thank you, Bert. The edit function is not working for me. I do have an active studio subscription. Okay, yeah, so the edit mode is only included in Krotos Studio Pro. So the studio side will give you access to all this stuff and to the library and to the ambience generator, but not to the edit mode. So if you want to go under the hood, edit, build your own, you'll need access to Krotos Studio Pro. Will you include theme music to build actual musical score? Interesting. But are you there? Would you like to elaborate on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we do television shows and things like that, and it would be great instead of having to hire a very expensive composer to be able to do some of the more simple stuff ourselves. But without a strong musical background, you're kind of unable to do that.
Mm. So what would you regard as the simple stuff? Like what would be a handy thing to be able to reach for?
Well, typically, you're certainly not going to get the theme song, but you could get the typical scoring music that it's really like one step beyond what you showed there today. You made terrific sounds that acted like a score and were technically a form of a score, but I'm talking about more of an actual musical score where you were able to make music.
Yeah, so the music presets that I showed off today, they're really just a sort of first step in that sort of direction that I think we can go in. There's been lots of really good feedback from everyone, including yourself there, about where we could take that. I think there's got a lot of potential. It does a particular thing in a particular way right now, but I think we can expand that enormously. So yeah, it'd be great to hear more thoughts of things like that for future development.
Most of what you were using today were like drone elements of different kinds, but I could see that working with if you had, looping drum rhythms and such. I mean, it's going to sound very AI in their beginning scenes, but I could see that potentially, evolving.
So with the music stuff, actually, none of it is AI. It's all audio. Written.
No, I mean the way it combines could start to
see.
sound a little AI because it's all going to morph and shift and pitch bend and.
Okay, sure, yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of things here that just do have other types of beats and stuff. I used one particular preset in a particular way. I'd definitely advise you to take a look at some of the stuff that's here. It can be used in lots of ways, but yeah, I think it can be greatly expanded and can be made a lot more musical. I think it's controllable in a particular way right now. It's quite useful, but we can take that a lot further. So just yes, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just adding a couple of piano and guitar simple loops could alleviate the slightly AI feel. To just have a few more just straight acoustic loops.
Acoustic instruments, yeah.
Mix in.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I completely agree. I think at the time we needed to lean more in the sort of electronic direction, but it would be great to have a collection of things with more acoustic instruments for sure. Yeah, thank you. That's a great idea. Cool. I think someone was saying something about conforms and presets and stuff. So something else I wanted to point out that again some people don't know is so the directory where all the recordings go, you can specify where that goes. So at the moment, all these files are actually not in my session, they're somewhere else. So you can of course collect them all in there, but what you can also do is set where those are recorded to. So if you're working on a big project or a series or whatnot, you want to make sure that all these recordings go into one place. You can do that from the settings and the drag and drop. See, at the moment, this is the default where these are recorded to. But if I click here, I can then, navigate and put them wherever I want. So I can put these within a certain session, or I can put them on my library external disk so that it all gets put as part of the library, or, that's all a controllable thing. I don't think that was the exact question, but I just thought I'd mention that because, again, I think that's a sort of little known fact which can be really useful, particularly if you're moving sessions around between machines. Multiple outputs available for Studio. So multiple outputs is available for Studio and Pro. You can do it in either. James, you were using the music presets today. That sounds interesting. Is James there?
Whenever I do music, it's interesting. Come on, Matt.
I have a feeling that you said you were unlikely to use the music presets, so I'm glad that you
I
managed
eat
to
my
use them.
words every once in a while. Every once in a while.
Tim, okay, you're asking multi-outputs. So in Pro Tools, at least, this is how you do it. So let me just go right to the bottom and I'll do it from scratch. So if I create a stereo instrument track, I'll just make a new instance of Studio. So let me close the one I've got. Where did it go? Why did you add it there? Okie dokie. I'm going to put you down the bottom. Right, great. Okay, so stereo instrument track, multi-channel plugin, Krotos Studio. Great. Okay, so now I need to create some audio tracks to receive the audio. So I'm going to create 4 stereo audio tracks. Okay, so once I've made those tracks, you need to just set up the routing so that the track can listen to Studio and receive the audio. So the multi-channel feature is kind of a little hidden, which is why I like to try and highlight it and talk about it, because it's not, unless you kind of encounter it like this, you won't know that it's there, unfortunately. So from here, you want to click on the input section, and then rather than saying, okay, I want an audio input, you go to plugin, find the instance of the plugin that you want. So in this case, we want the Studio one on instrument A. And then where it says, tabs 1 to 4, just select tab 1 on the first track, tab 2 on the second one, and then keep going. So you're basically just telling each of these audio tracks to just, as the input, listen to this very specific tab from Krotos Studio. So now, with a bit of luck, let's go to a different preset. Let's load the forest, something peaceful at the end of the day. End of the day for me, beginning of the day for most of you. So if I now arm those tracks, even if I mute the track where Studio's on, the outputs are being routed in parallel to these new audio tracks. So if I solo them all, just so I don't hear the design that I did, and I just hit record, what we should see now is each of these layers individually being recorded. So if I turn them up, it should be probably a little bit easier and easier to spot on the stems. So there we go. So now we've got this one, which should be our birds. I can just rename that. So that's just the birds, no stream, no other animals, no whatnot. Next one's going to be wind. Next one's probably the stream. Yep, just the stream. No. There we go. Stream. And this one's going to be the other animals that are generated sort of intermittently. So there we go. That's our multi-channel output. The great thing about this, though, which I did mention earlier on, but I didn't showcase, is that this works with any preset. So I tend to show it with ambiances because it's extremely useful and people ask for it a lot. But what's another good example? Maybe is there something else I've not shown? Think of an example. Let's go to one of the cinematic ones. So, all right, let's use this one. So as far as I remember, yeah, okay. So pretty much every Studio preset is set up to leverage this workflow. So if I go further along now, I just want to hear all of these. And again, I'll just, record. I was going over them, but we get the point. So if I perform here, okay, cool. So I've got a kind of reverse effect here. Let's take these clips, move them out of the way. So again, now if I play that back, we'll hear all of them together. But each of these has now been broken out. So these will no longer be these names, but you'll kind of get the idea. So now, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, fine. Let's just play them back. So this will be the first layer. It's kind of a brassy layer. This is going to be another one. The rumble layer. This is going to be maybe a glassy layer. And then this is going to be something kind of higher pitch and tonal. So the advantage of that is that it'll work with anything, not just ambiances. Ambiances is obviously really, really powerful because you'll probably be asked to, in a mixed situation to provide more, but you can use it for anything. So it's like super, super powerful in that, if you then decide that, hey, you know what, I don't want this layer, or I want to process that layer with, I don't know, my favorite plugin chain, you can do that really easily. So, yeah, it's a really powerful feature that is a bit hidden.
Matt, I missed the step where you went from the instrument 1 to breaking it out into 4. I'm sure it was something simple, but could you just tell me what that was called so I can look it up later?
Sure, yeah. So you just, once you've got Studio on a MIDI track, so you were Logic, right? So then you just
I'll be in Pro Tools as well. So you can show me the here. It's
sure,
fine.
yeah. So all you need to do then is create 4 stereo audio tracks. And then on the input for each of those tracks, you just go plug in. So rather than being, like an audio input from your interface or a bus, choose plugin, find Krotos Studio, and then just choose one of the tabs and just do 1, 2, 3.
Oh, is that like the old rewire feature that was in some DAWs?
Not really. It's just straight up audio routing. So, we've built this in a way that you can just, send out different channels from the plugin itself.
Thanks. I'm jumping back into Pro Tools after about 10 or more years, so it's been a while.
Good luck. Have fun.
Thanks.
Is it useful for the crowd generator? That's a good question. Why don't we try it and see what happens?
I was saying it is useful for the crowd
Oh,
generator.
it is. Okay, so that wasn't the question. Yeah, awesome.
You can use it to break up the crowd, so you can use that and mixes separately if you mess up your mix the first time.
I didn't show the crowds actually, did I? So if people haven't used it yet, I really advise you to have a quick look. It's a really powerful way of, obviously generating the crowd and the intensity of the crowd. So obviously now I'm making the crowd larger. You can also control the gender mix of the crowd, which is also nice. So if you're in a scene where there are no men, you can remove them all. And now I want a larger group. And there we go. I'm going to bring in the male aspect as well. So let's try this as James was suggesting then. So let's use these same 4 tracks that we set up. So let's
breaks
dial
out
up.
to male and female. I don't think it breaks out to all 4.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. So that's just, okay, cool. Yeah, great. So that these are essentially male and female, not birds and wind.
And it's really useful if you're doing your own presets, because if you think about when you're building your preset in Pro, you can now break out your own stems for the mixer later.
It's a great point. If I had remembered to save the one I made, you would have benefited from that as well. The other cool thing I could have done if I also saved it was I could have used the preset export here to export it with a couple of clicks and then send it to you over Zoom, which would have been cool because then you could have opened it and played with it. So that's another really cool feature that I think is a little hidden. So the idea here is that, in fact, why don't I just start it again for the sake of argument?
Matt, what you're doing right here seems like a great topic for like a YouTube short or something, literally like a minute or 2 video. That would be awesome.
This specific thing here right now.
Yeah, just making the breakout sound and showing how you can You know, I think that would be extremely useful for people jumping in because I didn't even know how to get the sounds from the studio into Pro Tools before I saw
Yeah,
this video.
I know you're not the only one. It's a bit of a hidden one, which is something I'd like to change. Okay, cool. Right, well, okay, so for the sake of argument, I've just thrown these things in. I'm just going to call these sounds. And I can then use the preset export to share this with you guys. So once I do that, what it's done then is exported everything there, including all the files, into one little file here, which is 3 megabytes. So just oh, I don't think Zoom will let me do it because it doesn't let me send files. But if I was on Slack or some other form of, live chat, I can literally just take this and ping you the preset. You can then pick it up and open it, and you're away. So if you're working with other people who are using Studio, or you're working between multiple computers, this is a really helpful thing because you can just pick up your preset that you worked on that day, consolidate it with a couple of clicks, and pick it up and use it elsewhere. That's a really useful thing as well. Cool. Right. We're a little over time. Let me just get the chat up and just see if there are any more questions that have come in. The voices from purpose recorded, license recording, voice actors. Yes. So voice actors were used for those recordings, and that stuff was all taken care of when we recorded it. So again, that's not generated stuff. That's real people doing real walla. And what we've done is record it in a particular way and piece it back together again in this way to give you flexibility for that. How do I get a multi-channel recording logic? I feel like that's definitely a subject of a YouTube short of how to do multi-channel recording in every DAW because it doesn't function exactly the same in Pro Tools and it can be a little fiddly. So maybe that's something a good takeaway for me from this discussion as well. Great. Okay. Well, unless there are any other questions or queries or comments, I will leave you guys.
I do have a quick tip that I use with your product, and someone's asking about scoring with the guitars and all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend they look at like Sequus, and also I would look at the from Sonos Core the score. I think you'll be quite impressed with the results. The only problem is the only question you have to ask yourself is how willing are you willing to go with your tool set, purchase, right? Because you're going to need a keyboard, you're going to need other types of software. It's not going to be like, oh, I'll just pipe right into a Krotos Studio, right? You have to do a couple of bits and pieces and slice and dice it yourself. But once you get it in there, I think you'll be quite impressed with the results. That's for sure.
Nice. Thanks, Pete. That's a top tip. I haven't tried the score yet. It seems pretty cool.
Yeah, it's insane, actually. Yeah. Yeah, and it's, for small stuff, I think for what he's looking for or whatever. I mean, even if you look at Action Woodwinds or something like that, you can dump the MIDI or whatever for that, and then of course there's I mean, if you're just playing with MIDI and you want to do like some ARPs or whatever, one really great, very cheap plugin that will allow you to generate a lot of MIDI very quickly. I would have to say is probably Futurephonic. So they make something that is basically it's I don't know it's like $50 and it takes some playing around with it, but I mean it'll just generate a tremendous amount of MIDI very quickly, and it'll do like scales up and down, and it'll drop a beat, and you can have like a bass line, and it can go pretty well. Again, like that's MIDI though. Now you have to convert the MIDI into a sound, and you know what I mean. So, but there's some really neat stuff for helping you with getting a sound quickly. That sounds good.
Nice. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I'll have to try that out. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I hope it's been a useful session. Thank you all for coming along. Really appreciate you making your time to come and spend it with us. And if you have any other questions or anything else occurs, please let us know either by email, social media, or any other form of communication, including smoke signals. Yeah, have a great day. Great to see you all. Thanks for coming,
Thanks, everyone.
along and supporting us and asking questions.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.